Alchemy doesn't knock on just any door. It waits for the soul that's been cracked open by longing. Not everyone hears its call. It hides in riddles, symbols, and sacred metaphors, not to confuse, but to filter. This path is not for the curious, it's for the initiated. And initiation begins not with outer rituals, but with an inner fire that refuses to be ignored. That fire? It's your soul remembering who you really are. You see, true alchemy has never been about turning lead into gold, not in the literal sense. It's about turning your inner chaos, your wounds, your buried pain, into wisdom, clarity, and light. It's the art of spiritual combustion, a sacred burning. But here's the kicker. It only begins when you stop pretending. When the life you've built no longer feels like home and the mirror starts asking questions you can't unsee. This fire, this sacred unrest is not a curse, it's a signal. It means you're ready, ready to peel back the layers, ready to dissolve illusions you once called truth. Alchemy starts when you realize the version of you you've been protecting is exactly what needs to die. That death isn't tragic. It's the first sacred offering. The old self must burn so the true self can rise, and no, it's not poetic fluff. It's a lived reality for those brave enough to go within. Take a moment, right now. Pause everything. Ask yourself, where in my life am I still asleep? The answers won't always be pretty, but they will be honest. That's where the alchemy begins. Start reading between the lines of your own life. Symbols are everywhere, in your relationships, your patterns, your dreams. Begin with books like The Kybalion or Inner Gold by Robert A. Johnson. They don't give answers, they hand you keys. So before we even step into the first portal, know this: you are not here by accident. If you're feeling something stir, inside in a subtle pull, a fire that words can't quite name, that's your soul signaling that it's ready, ready to burn, ready to remember. Because once the fire starts, there's no turning back, only transformation. Every true transformation begins with a kind of death, and Negredo is that sacred collapse. It's the unraveling of who you thought you were, layer by painful layer. Your beliefs, your roles, your achievements, all of it starts to feel hollow. It's terrifying, yes, but it's also holy. Because only when the old self begins to rot can something real begin to bloom underneath. Negredo isn't darkness as punishment. It's darkness as preparation. Most people resist this stage. Naturally, no one likes to feel lost or stripped of control. But what they don't realize is that the breakdown is the doorway. The confusion, the emotional fog, the existential dread, they're signs that your ego is cracking and the soul is stepping in. This isn't about fixing your life. It's about surrendering to something far wiser than your mind. Think of it as a spiritual composting. You're not falling apart. You're decomposing what no longer serves. During Negredo, life often triggers what feels like chaos. Breakups, burnouts, identity crises. But here's the deeper layer. These aren't coincidences. They are orchestrated initiations. The universe doesn't waste pain. It uses it to shake you awake. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Try asking, what part of me is being asked to die? That single shift in perspective turns suffering into sacred instruction. Practical example, keep a death journal, not as morbid as it sounds. Each night, write down one belief, identity, or habit you're ready to release, even if you're not sure how. Naming it is an act of power. Pair that with silence. 10 minutes a day, no distractions. Just sit with yourself. Let what wants to fall away, downfall. That's where the real alchemy begins, now not in action, but in allowance. Negredo doesn't promise light, it promises depth. It drags you into your underworld, not to punish you, but to reveal what gold lies beneath the ashes. And just when you think you can't take the weight of the void, something subtle begins to shimmer in the silence. After the storm of Negredo comes the stillness of Albedo. But don't mistake stillness for passivity. This is where the magic begins to take shape. Albedo is purification, the rinsing of the soul. It's the moment after the breakdown when things become quiet. Not because everything's fixed, but because the noise of who you used to be is finally fading. And in that space, something honest can finally speak. This stage is deeply internal. There's less drama on the outside. But inside, it's like sitting alone in a vast white room with your thoughts echoing off the walls. Without distractions, you begin to realize how loud your inner dialogue truly is. But here's the catch. Those thoughts aren't you. They're echoes, programs, patterns, conditioning. Albedo is where you learn to observe without identifying, to sit in the silence and ask, if I'm not my thoughts, then who am I? This is when spiritual hygiene becomes essential. Just like you wouldn't skip a shower for a week, you can't skip cleansing your inner world. Meditation, breathwork, conscious fasting from media, they all help here. Even journaling can act like an inner soap, scrubbing away what doesn't belong. A great exercise? Thought tracking. Spend a day writing down repetitive inner scripts, then highlight the ones that aren't yours. You'll be shocked at what's been living rent-free in your mind. The gift of Albedo is clarity. It doesn't hand you all the answers, but it clears the fog so you can ask better questions. You begin to recognize that peace isn't something you chase, it's something you uncover once the noise is gone. Books like The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer or The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle are companions during this phase. They don't give you steps, they give you space. And space is exactly what Albedo invites you into. But here's the twist. In this new clarity, something ancient begins to stir, a deeper recognition that you are not separate from the universe, that there's a rhythm, a pattern, a truth, pulsing beneath everything. Once the mind quiets and the illusions dissolve, a deeper frequency begins to emerge. It's subtle at first, like a whisper you've heard all your life, but never stopped to really listen to. This is the portal of alignment, where the puzzle pieces start clicking into place. You begin to sense that the universe isn't random, that there's an architecture behind existence, and it responds not to effort but to energy. Here, the 7 Hermetic Principles become more than just words on an ancient scroll. They become lived experiences. Mentalism teaches that all is mind. Your reality begins within. Correspondence shows you that the patterns you see outside mirror what's inside. Vibration reminds you that everything, emotions, thoughts, even silence, carries a frequency. It's not just philosophy anymore. It's practical. You feel it, you see it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Polarity and rhythm hit hard in daily life. One moment you're high, the next you're crashing. But now, instead of resisting, you start riding the waves. You stop taking contrast personally. You see duality not as punishment, but as balance. Cause and effect shows up in your habits. You speak with more care, act with more consciousness. And gender, it's not about man or woman. It's about the dance of creation, the sacred masculine and feminine within us all. Want to live these truths, not just study them? Start simple. Practice mentalism. Each morning, set an inner tone for your day before touching your phone. For correspondence, clean your room. It reflects and affects your mind. For vibration, curate your playlist. Your music is your medicine. Read the Kybalion, yes, but more importantly, watch how these principles show up in your relationships, your decisions, your triggers. That's where the real wisdom lives. And as you align, something curious begins to happen. Life starts to feel like it's working with you. Not always easy, not always gentle, but undeniably intelligent. It's like the universe was waiting for you to tune in. And now that you have, it starts speaking in signs, synchronicities, and truths that hit you like lightning. If thoughts shape reality, words give it form. In the beginning was the word, not just as myth, but as metaphysical law. Ancient traditions knew this. The Egyptians believed speech was creation, and their hieroglyphs weren't just writing. They were spells. Today we casually throw words like confetti, not realizing we're casting microspells every time we speak. The truth? Every sentence is either building your temple or tearing it down. Most people are unconscious magicians, conjuring chaos through sarcasm, self-deprecation, and idle complaints. You say, "I'm always broke," and guess what? Your subconscious treats it as a command. You say, "I'm not good enough," and the universe aligns with that vibration. But here's the power flip. When you become intentional with language, your reality starts to bend accordingly. Words aren't just communication. They're containers of frequency, and frequency is everything. Want to begin working with this portal? Start by observing your most common phrases. Keep a speech journal for 3 days. Write down your self-talk, the things you say when you're stressed, when you're joking, when no one's watching. You'll be shocked how often your words betray your intentions. Then shift them. Turn "I'm trying" into "I'm becoming." Turn "I can't" into "I'm learning." Small tweaks, big energy shift. That's real-time alchemy. Books, like The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, are pure gold here. Especially the first agreement. Be impeccable with your word. It's not about being polite or positive all the time. It's about being in integrity. If you say you'll do something, honor it. If you speak a truth, make sure it's grounded. Language is a sacred act. Speak like the universe is listening, because it is. And once you begin honoring your words, something fascinating unfolds. Your reality starts honoring you back. Conversations shift. People respond differently. Even your inner voice starts sounding more like a coach than a critic. The tongue, they say, is a double-edged sword, but in the hands of a conscious soul, it becomes a key. One of the greatest illusions on the path is the idea that you must choose a side, light or dark, logic or intuition, strength or softness. But true alchemy doesn't ask you to choose, it asks you to integrate. This is the portal of paradox, the fusion of opposites. Here you begin to understand that the universe doesn't work in straight lines. It moves in spirals, and those spirals are woven from contrast. You are not either or, you are both and. The warrior and the healer, the fire and the water. When you reject one part of yourself, you sever your power. The alchemist learns to hold contradiction without collapsing, to honor the shadow while walking in the light. This isn't weakness, and it's mastery. The real strength is being able to look at your rage and say, "I see you," without letting it drive the car. Real integration starts with acceptance, not approval. You don't need to love your fear to sit with it. You just need to stop running from it. Jung said it best, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate." Want to begin the work? Start shadow journaling. Ask yourself, what do I reject in others that might live in me? That single question can crack open the gates to your deepest healing. Fusion doesn't mean balance in the textbook sense. It means relationship, a dance. Sometimes your inner divine masculine needs to take the lead. Other times, the sacred feminine needs to hold space. Integration isn't static. It's intelligent, like breath, like tide. Study Taoism, yin-yang. Philosophy, or the alchemical marriage in mystic texts. They'll remind you, wholeness isn't perfection, it's presence. And once you stop fighting the opposites, a strange peace arrives. Not the peace of still waters, but the peace of someone who can swim in storms and still know the direction of shore. And it's from that centered place that the true teacher inside you begins to awaken. After dancing with your shadows and integrating the opposites, something begins to shift. The noise lessens, the seeking quiets, and suddenly, there's a presence within you that wasn't there before, or maybe it was always there, but you were too busy to hear it. This is the emergence of the inner master, not a voice from the sky, not a guru on a mountain, but the you that remembers, the you that's always known. The inner master doesn't speak loudly. It doesn't need to prove anything. Its wisdom rises in stillness, often when you least expect, during a walk, a deep breath, a quiet moment between thoughts. That's the key, between. The space between reaction and response, between distraction and attention. It lives in the pause. The awakened you isn't louder. It's simply clearer, calmer, rooted. And in that calm, real answers arise. Reaching this state doesn't require perfection, it requires presence. You don't have to become a monk, just become honest. When a challenge comes, instead of panicking or outsourcing your power, pause and ask, what would the wisest version of me do right now? That question alone begins to rewire everything. Want to go deeper? Study mystics like Ramana Maharshi or books like The Seat of the Soul by Gary Zukav. But more than reading, practice listening. Silence is your greatest ally here. Not forced silence, but intentional stillness. 10 minutes of conscious breathing can unlock more insight than 10 hours of overthinking. And the less you chase external validation, the louder your inner master speaks. You stop needing signs. You become the sign. It's not that you stop learning. It's that you stop outsourcing your authority. The teacher and the student finally sit in the same seat. And when this presence becomes familiar, everything changes. Your choices become cleaner. Your boundaries become sacred. You no longer move to impress, you move from alignment. And just when you think this is the end of the path and you realize it's only the crystallization of the beginning. This is where the myth becomes real. Not because you found a glowing stone in a cave, but because you became it. The philosopher's stone isn't an object. It's a state of being. It's the soul, purified and integrated, now able to transmute, not just metals but moments, pain into wisdom, fear into clarity, confusion into direction. The alchemist no longer learns truth, they embody it. By this stage, you're no longer reacting to life, you're co-creating with it. The universal laws don't feel like concepts, they pulse through your choices, your presence, your words. People around you feel it, even if they can't explain it. That's what illumination does. It's not about being perfect or enlightened. In the Instagram sense, it's about being whole, real, and radically present. Your energy speaks before your mouth does. Living as the philosopher's stone means living with spiritual responsibility. Your vibration affects the field. Your integrity ripples through your family, your community, your timeline. You're no longer just a seeker. You've become a source. Not the source, but a source. Someone who walks through the world like a quiet flame, steady, warm, illuminating, and impossible to ignore. And you didn't get here by accident. You were refined into it. Want to ground this in practice? Stop chasing. Start radiating. Instead of asking, what should I do next? Ask, what do I already know that I'm ready to live? Choose one principle you've learned, maybe mentalism, maybe polarity, and embody it fully for a week. Not in theory. In every conversation, every breath, every challenge, that's the real secret. The stone isn't something you find. It's something you become by practice. And the most powerful part, the journey never really ends. Illumination isn't a final destination. It's a state you commit to moment after moment. The philosopher's stone isn't the end of alchemy. It's when you realize you are now the vessel through which the great work continues.